What's up, guys? It's been a hot minute since we have made a video about our four-wheel drive drag racing suspension, and a big topic that we need to spend a lot of time discussing is the whole voodoo of this front axle. It's really nothing crazy. It shouldn't be intimidating to you. There is, yes, a lot going on up here, but if you just take everything in small bites like we have been in the past, you'll be able to understand it. You'll be able to set this thing up properly to have good success. So before we get into anything, let's just talk about some terms. Some terms you need to know are going to be caster, camber, and toe. I think a lot of people are familiar with those, and we're going to explain their effects. Another one to discuss is steering ratio, pinion angle, and scrub radius. These are some terms that I think some people probably don't know or don't really understand the effects of. And then just like the rear, if you are four-linked in the front, or if you are a factory radius arm, so second, third, fourth gen, that's all four-link, we will discuss instant center and its relation to the front. So before we jump into any of the four-link stuff that we're going to cover today, let's understand first how this axle is working. So the front axle is actually running in reverse how it would be on the rear axle. So anytime you're making changes, buying a limited slip differential, any of that stuff, you have to make sure that you remember that this thing is running in reverse when we're going down the racetrack. So the four-link setup. This is an area where it's like everything else that we're doing. It's a gray area. Everything I tell you is, I don't think that this should be set in stone. This isn't the end all be all. This is just where we're at, March 26, 2022. This is what we have found to work the best. As human nature is, there will be a better way come about. People are always, since the dawn of time, have been doing things better than before. But as of right now, this is what we have found to have the best success with. So you've heard me talk about rear spread on housing and spread on the chassis brackets. Well, in the front, that stuff isn't nearly as important. What we're trying to do with the front axle is essentially just help keep going straight, just keep the vehicle moving forward. We actually don't want the front axle to have much of a job at all. We want to do most of the work with the rear and just help the front keep us going down the racetrack. So if you don't want to give the front much work, you don't want to put much bite in it. So like we said in the last videos, bite would all be determined on where you would set your instant center. Now, I know a lot of people think, oh, well, you can just go out and plot out your instant center on this to make it have, separation or compression or whatever. But keep in mind, we're running in reverse. So yeah, you could do an anti-squat line from the bottom of this tire to the back of the top tire. But what is that really going to tell you? That's some, figmentive information that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The simplest way to set one of these things up is just set it up neutral. And what I mean by that is set both top and bottom four-link bars as parallel as you can get them. So remember, this thing's running in reverse. So if you were trying to set instant center, you'd really be trying to set your instant center out in front of the truck. But the truth of it is we don't really know what that does, because that's all just a theory. So if you don't want the axle to do much work, just neutral it all out. Top bar as close as you can get to level, bottom bar as close as you can get to level. If anything, like my truck, you'll notice has the top bar is actually down a little bit in the rear. If anything, I would like to keep it that way. I would never really want the front four-link bars like this, because that's going to make your instant center intersect somewhere in front of the vehicle. And the truth is we really don't know what that does. So if you keep it level, these two imaginary lines never intersect. And if you keep it like that, they never intersect. So keeping it nice and neutral is what I would shoot for. Now, as far as preload goes, in the rear, you would use the top passenger side four-link bar to set your preload. So if the truck was driving a little bit left on you, you could put a little preload in it, it'd bring it back right. On the front, I don't really want to do any of that. When you have a limited slip differential, you've got one axle way shorter than the other axle. There's just some factors involved that I don't think preload really helps you much. And maybe in the future when things start to get really, really advanced, you can play with preload a little bit, but just neutral it all out. And so what I mean by neutraling it out is you can grab that 4-link bar, any of the 4-link bars, and you can actually rotate them so there's no pressure on them. Now, of course, you want to check this with you in the truck, ideally race weight, ready to go down the racetrack. But if you are going to do any amount of preload at all, I would recommend doing it with the driver's side bottom bar. And that's because it's running in reverse, so you got to flip everything from how the rear is. So if you're going to try to set any preload, I'd recommend doing it with that bottom driver's side bar. As far as spread goes on the housing side or the chassis side, because you're shooting for neutral, spread isn't really going to make any difference. So you can keep it as narrow as possible, or you could make it as wide, as far apart as possible, as long as it's neutraled out so the instant center lines never intersect. You don't have any mechanical leverage on the rear end or the chassis side, so setting the spread isn't going to change anything one way or the other. So really just use your 4-link holes and positions to make your bars as close to level or just a little bit down on the upward bar as possible. I'm going to cap this video here. I know it's a little bit shorter than my traditional suspension videos, but with there being so many aspects of this that we have to talk about, if I tried to talk about all of it in one video, we'd have an hour-long video, and that really doesn't do anybody any good. So we're going to stop with this discussion, and we're going to pick back up with pinion angle and caster, because those are definitely the two next biggest things that you need to factor after you've set your instant center in the front. So like always, guys, I appreciate you watching. If you want to stay notified on this content, please like and subscribe. That's going to be the easiest way for you to be notified when I continue to make these suspension videos. I know we're getting really close to race season. Guys are setting their builds up, so I'm going to pump out this series relatively quickly. I'd like to have it done within the next 2 weeks or so. So subscribing is the easiest way to stay on top of the new videos coming out. So appreciate it, guys, and we will catch you on the next one.